Have you ever pictured royal life as endless feasts, glittering jewels, and sparkling palaces? That's the story we've been told for centuries, but the truth was far darker. Behind the walls of those golden courts, servants lived in a world of filth, stench, and fear. They weren't just lighting candles or serving food. They were forced to clean chamber pots, scrape filth from unwashed clothes, and even remove lice from their queen's hair. One mistake could mean humiliation, punishment, or even death. For these forgotten men and women, the palace wasn't a dream. It was a prison dressed in silk and jewels. Today, we're tearing down the mask of royal glamour to reveal the disgusting tasks servants were forced to endure. Brace yourself, because once you hear what life was really like behind the throne, you'll never look at royalty the same way again. When you imagine queens of the past, you might picture them bathing in rose water, scented with lavender, and surrounded by luxury. The reality was the complete opposite. In many parts of medieval Europe, bathing was seen as dangerous. People believed hot water opened the pores and let disease creep in. So, queens often went weeks, sometimes months, without touching a bath. Instead of washing, they covered themselves with heavy perfumes, powders, and oils to hide the stench. And who had to deal with the grim results? Their servants. Imagine pulling on layer after layer of gowns over skin coated with weeks of sweat and grime. Servants had to scrape crumbs, dirt, and grease from dresses that were rarely washed, making them look presentable again. And then there were the chamber pots, the portable toilets kept right in the queen's room. Servants carried them away, often several times a day, through dark stone corridors. One slip, one spill, and your humiliation was complete. Hygiene wasn't elegant, it was a nightmare. And for the servants, it was their daily job. If you think your garbage can smell bad after a week, imagine the stench inside a royal court where hundreds of people lived without proper sanitation. The air was thick with sweat, unwashed hair, spoiled food, smoke from the kitchens, and the ever-present chamber pots. Even in the queen's private chambers, the smell was impossible to escape. Servants were trapped in it day and night. They slept in cramped corners near kitchens, stables, or storage rooms, surrounded by rotting scraps, damp straw, and animal waste. The odor clung to their skin, their hair, their clothes. There was no washing it away. Some servants lived in such conditions for so many years that they lost their sense of smell entirely. For them, the stench of decay, waste, and sweat became as ordinary as breathing. What seems unbearable to us was their daily reality. Living in filth wasn't just disgusting, it was deadly. Servants were exposed to diseases every single day. Smallpox, tuberculosis, and even the plague crept through castles like silent killers. And who were the first to fall sick? The ones who handled the filth no one else would touch. The servants. They scrubbed soiled clothes, changed unwashed bedding crawling with lice and fleas, and carried chamber pots brimming with human waste. Every task meant direct contact with germs, parasites, and infection. Unlike their wealthy masters, servants had no doctors waiting to treat them. If they grew weak or sick, they were often left to suffer in silence, easily replaced by someone more able. Parasites were everywhere. Lice hid in the folds of royal garments, fleas thrived in bedding, and rats scurried through storerooms. Servants even had to pick lice out of their queen's hair, risking the little creatures jumping straight into their own. Many died young, their bodies worn down by disease and malnutrition. For them, service to royalty wasn't just exhausting, it was a death sentence waiting to happen. Royal fashion dazzled on the surface, but for the servants who maintained it, those gowns were a nightmare. Queens were expected to wear enormous dresses made of silk, velvet, and layers upon layers of fabric. Some outfits weighed more than 30 pounds. Dressing a queen wasn't just about slipping on clothes. It was a grueling process that could take hours. And here's the disturbing part. These gowns were rarely, if ever, washed. Servants had to air them out, brush away dirt, and drown them in perfumes to cover the stench of sweat and decay. The undergarments were even worse. Queens might wear the same set for days, sometimes weeks. By the time servants removed them, they often found rashes, sores, and infections caused by lack of cleanliness. Every lace, button, and ribbon had to be perfect. One small mistake could trigger a queen's anger, and for a servant, that could mean humiliation or even punishment. Being a royal servant wasn't a job, it was a life sentence. From the moment the sun rose until long after it set, every second belonged to the queen. There were no weekends, no holidays, and certainly no days off. If the queen called in, the middle of the night, you came running, no matter how tired, sick, or broken you felt. Privacy didn't exist. Servants lived in cramped quarters, often sharing spaces colder than stables. Their meager wages barely kept them alive, yet refusing an order wasn't an option. If a servant hesitated, made a mistake, or displeased the queen, the consequences could be brutal: public humiliation, physical punishment, or instant dismissal. And losing the position was often worse than enduring it. Outside the palace walls, poverty, hunger, and homelessness waited. For many, serving royalty was the lesser of two evils, a gilded cage that offered survival at the cost of freedom. Every day was filled with back-breaking labor, lifting, scrubbing, bending, hauling, cleaning. Their bodies wore out quickly, malnutrition made them weak, and many never lived long enough to grow old. For servants, royal life wasn't luxury. It was endless chains of servitude. How did servants endure such misery? Many simply learned to numb themselves. Some carried small pouches of herbs, flowers, or scented cloths tucked into their sleeves, hoping to mask the stench that clung to their daily work. Others found comfort in bonds with fellow servants. Friendships formed in the shadows of the palace, where only they understood each other's pain. These small acts of survival offered brief relief, but they couldn't erase the reality. Each day was still filled with filth, fear, and fatigue. For most, endurance wasn't strength. It was the only way to stay alive.